the return, my apologies, of Adulting 101. And as you all know, I am Jerome Hansen and I'm the Executive Director for Aspire Jamaica. And I'm excited for us kicking off today's first session on the topic matters. And I look forward to hearing what our presenters or guests have to say today. As we're citizens of Jamaica, we must understand the Constitution and the legal matters that guides us, our rights as citizens, our responsibilities as citizens, especially as we transition into adulthood. We want to ensure that the decisions we make will benefit our lives positively in the short and the long run, right? So, whether it is understanding contracts, right? Taxes, whatever it is, we must have some legal foundation of understanding what our rights are. So again, welcome. Welcome to Mr. Brian and Miss Roberts. Come on, guys, give them the Aspera welcome in the chat. Again, it's good to see you all here and welcome. And lovely Aspera welcome, Mr. Brian, Miss Roberts. We're pleased to have you here and we look forward to hear what you have to say, right? Well, I have my notepad here and my pen here, so I will be taking notes, of course. So, looking forward to hearing what you have to say. And again, welcome, welcome, welcome.
All right, great. Thank you for that, Mr. Hanson. You guys are hearing me, right? All
Loud
right,
and
great.
clear.
Because flow is not on my side today, so we're pushing through. All right. So a quick icebreaker. You guys know the topic today is legal matters, and legal matters law. It entails a lot of things, right? There's the Constitution, and there are various acts. There's the Employment Act and a bunch of other acts that I can't name right now. But that's why we're here, right? We're going to learn. We're going to learn eventually. Miss Roberts, sorry, and Mr. Brian, they're going to make sure that we leave here knowing at least a little more about the laws of Jamaica. So the icebreaker that I am putting forward right now is for you guys. So the first person who can guess what will be discussed today will get a prize. If you can at least put in the chat a topic or maybe a statement, and if that statement or topic comes up in tonight's session, then you will get a prize. You know, you can't tell me legal matters. No, Shamila, try again. Try again. Anisha, okay. Who said law? Who said law? Um, look here. So yes, that will be it. So send your suggestions in the chat, and as soon as this meeting is done and we know what the session is about, then we'll see who guessed correctly. So we are going to have our introduction of guest speakers, and that will be done by Miss Tahilia Blake.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Right. So, good evening again, everyone. So, I'll be introducing our first speaker, Miss Roberts. Okay. So, Ruth Ann Roberts is a passionate and dedicated attorney at law who practices a general scope of legal areas, including civil litigation, probate, conveyancing, and entertainment law. She's a proud Christian and a patriot of Jamaica, She's committed to using her legal expertise to positively impact society while upholding integrity and excellence in her profession. Ruthann is an alumna of Arden High School, where she developed a strong academic foundation and a deep appreciation for leadership and service. She later pursued her undergraduate degree in law at the University of the West Indies Mona Faculty of Law, where she served as the legal education officer and was actively involved in various student activities and social events. She then advanced to the Norman Manley Law School, where she served as the academic chairperson in her second year. During her time here, she explored her love for advocacy by participating in the Lex Caribbean interviewing competition and the Margaret Forte or Fort mock trial competition. In addition to her legal pursuits, she showcased her creativity and love for the arts by choreographing dances and performing in silk, an annual talent showcase held in support of a cause. Beyond the courtroom, Ruth Ann is an entrepreneur and the proud owner of RSR Entertainment Studios, a photography business that reflects her passion for creativity and visual storytelling. In her spare time, she enjoys road trips, spending time with family and friends, and immersing herself in the performing arts. A strong advocate for national development, she is passionate about contributing to Jamaica's growth, particularly in the areas of law, entertainment, financial literacy, and innovation. Ruthan also enjoys motivational talks, inspiring others to pursue excellence and personal growth. Above all, she strives to glorify God through her work and endeavors, using her platform to make, which is demure, make a meaningful difference in the lives of her fellow Jamaicans. Ladies and gentlemen, I proudly announce you no other than Ruthann Roberts, attorney at law. Could you guys send up the emojis in the chat, please, and also in the meet? Thank you.
I thank you so much, Miss Blake. However, I believe it was Mr. Brian that wanted to go first based on his content, and he would allow me. If that's okay with the directors.
And that's okay. She's going to introduce both. No.
Okay, so the next introduction as well. So Shamar Bryan is a dynamic and versatile young professional making a mark as an attorney at law with expertise in criminal, civil, estate, family, and other legal areas. Beyond his legal practice, he serves as an active human rights advocate, constantly fighting for justice and equality. As the immediate past president of the Norman Manley Law School Student Association, Shamar demonstrated strong leadership skills and a commitment to his peers. In addition to his legal and advocacy work, Shamar is also a multifaceted entrepreneur. He is the director of Forty Stores and Hiking, offering unique outdoor experiences, and is the creative force behind Cover Up, a clothing brand that blends style and purpose. Shamar's drive and ambition extend across multiple industries, making him a true example of modern day versatility and leadership. Also, let me proudly introduce you Next speaker for this evening as well, Mr. Shamar Bryan. Could you guys send up the emojis as well in the chat? Keep them coming. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you guys for such a very warm welcome. Could you confirm if you're hearing me clearly?
Yes, we are.
All right, excellent. Absolutely excellent. All right, let me just bring this presentation to the forefront. All right, guys. So, one of the things that I like to tell anybody is that when it comes on to any opportunity, particularly like this, whereas you are given the chance to interact with your peers or persons that are outsourced, such as myself and Ms. Roberts, I think it is the excellent time to start them. What do I mean by that? Use the time that you have right now to ask as many questions as necessary. But before I properly begin, I just want to make a public disclaimer, as well as
It seems Mr.
if you
Bryan
can
has
hear.
some. Okay.
Yeah, is there me clearly?
Yes, we're hearing you now.
Oh, okay, cool, cool, cool. All right, yes. So, in terms of what you are going to be hearing today, it is not in the form of legal advice. However, it is with the purpose of educating you so you are one step wiser than the other person in the room with you. So, with that said, let us jump right into the presentation. And guys, feel free to ask questions at any point in time if it seems as if I'm going too fast, or if it's a case where I say something that you might not understand, then feel free, raise a hand. Madam Moderator, if you would be so kind, could you just indicate to me when there is a question in the chat or if there's a hand raised so I can just pause and then just address that?
Will do, no problem.
All righty, all righty. So, civil rights. What are civil rights? I like to make things very interactive. So, for anyone that is on the platform, and I hope you don't mind me calling some names. So, I see a, let me see now, let me see now, let me see now. Tracy. I'm seeing a Tracy on the platform. Tracy Williams.
I knew it was
Are
gonna be
you
me. I knew it. I felt it in my spirit that it was going to be me. Okay, so civil rights, I believe that those are rights that are afforded to each human being, regardless of your age, gender, race, nationality. These are basic human rights that are afforded to all people.
ding, ding, ding. Excellent. Wow. You know,
I already
Tracy,
do.
your
I
answer
already
really,
do.
it really makes me think if you were really preparing for that answer from way before we come on the platform. So yes, you've got it right on the mark. When it comes down to civil rights, these are rights or entitlements afforded to literally every single person. So let's get right into it. Because when it comes down to rights, they encompass a very large dimension. What do I mean by that? You have rights in every area, whether it be with marriage, whether it be in employment, contract, the constitution, which is the overbearing law of the land. What do I mean by that? It is what enshrines Jamaica and is what gives each and every Jamaican citizen and any other person, if you're not a Jamaican citizen, these entitlements to freedom. Freedom to do what are enshrined, and we'll get right into them. So don't you worry. But yes, so even though you see the rights that are here on the screen, there are many, many, many more. You would have heard Madam Moderator give a few examples such as employment law or stuff like that. But when it comes on to these enactments, or for short, the acts, they are called statutes. And these statutes cover many different areas. You will find a statute for literally every walk of life. So if it be, let's say you are a customer and you want to go down to the store and make a purchase, there is an act called the Consumer Affairs Act. And this delegates what rights a consumer might have. So that's just an example to go straight forward into it. But yes, I thought that these particular rights that are listed on the screen would give you somewhat more of practical benefits, especially tonight. So if you guys ever have any questions or other areas that you'd like to discuss, then when we're open for questions at the end, then by all means we can take on some. All right. So the first one being spousal rights. And when it comes on to the legal practice, definitions are everything. So spousal rights define a single man or woman who has cohabited with a single man or woman, but in this context, a man with a woman, as if he or she were in law, his husband or wife, for a period of not less than 5 years. So what that mean now? What that means is, let's say you, John Brown, and Jane Doe have been living as boyfriend and girlfriend for a good while now. So when I'm moving from 2019 and now it is 2025, you guys have been acting as a great couple and you've been doing all that stuff. She's been providing meals for John. John has been going to work, paying the bills. He's been an upstanding gent, and Jane has been an amazing wife. Well, girlfriend in this case. So what the law encapsulates is that even though John never put a ring on Jane's finger, huh, well, the law thinks otherwise. What happens is that by law, a common law marriage is formed. Common law meaning it comes from the factual circumstance of that dwelling. So if anybody, let's say by chance, you were in a very long relationship, but you weren't thinking about getting married, well, too bad for you. The law classifies it as marriage in the legal sense. And with that comes obligations and rights. So these rights apply to both the man, being the husband, and the woman, being the wife. So when it comes down to law, as I said earlier, there are many, many different acts, and these acts apply in several ways. So when it comes down to marriage, you have the Marriage Act, the Matrimonial Causes Act, the Property Rights of Spouses Act, and the Children Guardianship and Custody Act. But you see, the thing about it now, the law is very tricky, and you'll often hear me say, it depends, right? You'll hear a lot of lies that quite often. So if you hear me saying it, just don't hear because it does depend. It depends on the circumstances of the matter. So the Marriage Act and the Matrimonial Causes Act, they often come in play when you're being divorced. God forbid it that anybody here is on the platform that does go through the process of marriage or a common law marriage and then have to go through divorce. I would hate to see you coming before me in my office saying that John Bonia or anything of that sort would have happened, and you want to lift up and you want to get clear with it. Let's put that out in the air. Cool. So the Marriage Act and the Matrimonial Causes Act really deal with the whole issue of divorce. And divorce is a key term when it comes on to what happens next in law of how assets are shared and how, let's say, if there is a child or property, or property being assets within the marriage. So the key takeaways, and I make sure I highlight them because these are the things that you will come up against quite often. So divorce in Jamaica is under the authority of a no-fault system. What does that mean? Does anybody here know what a no-fault system is? Three, two, okay, fine. So no-fault system means that when a divorce is going before the courts, they don't look at the reason behind the divorce. Let's say if John were to, God forbid it, and I apologize for using this example so much, but let's say John born Jane for whatever reason that John might have. And because of that unfaithful occurrence, Jane and John unfortunately decided to break apart. In that case, the courts will say, oh, well, it doesn't really matter what would have happened, but the fact is, are you guys able to make up? Because, and if you hear me using these big terms, don't get frightened because I'm going to explain it right after. Because trust me, when I was learning this too, a few years now, yeah, it did kind of boggle me as well. But they go into the matrimonial side of things, whether the holy matrimony, as some persons like to call it, would hold still after whatever occurred. The court is really just concerned with, can you make up? Can you fix this in some form of con some counseling? Or can you meet like halfway? Can it be mended? That's what the court is concerned about. The court isn't really concerned about who did this, who did that. Right. Simone, right on the dot. Reconciliation. I love that word. Simone, you just earned 2 points. Cool. So can they reconcile? If they are at odds and they cannot, let's say by chance they've gone through counseling and them say, no man, can't do this. No more things are going. I just want to be done with him and out. Then the court will say, all right, since we're at a point where you guys literally just can't stand being with each other and there's no likelihood that the marriage will be fixed, then we'll go through out with the divorce. But what if there was Jimmy in this mix? Yes. What if John and Jane had Jimmy? Then the courts will then look deeper within the scenario because a marriage is between two people, yes? For our culture, that is. For our culture. Well, it's even kind of sketchy to say it with Jamaican culture, as you guys know how it is sometimes. But for our culture, it is between two persons. But from those two persons, often a little offspring is born. In this case, Jimmy. So let's say Jimmy is added to the family, but Jane and John decide that they can't get along and fix the marriage. Then the court is going to decide what happens to Jimmy, right? So if John and Jane can decide, say, yo, let's come to an agreement. Me take Jimmy for the weekdays for some ice cream, and then you take Jimmy for the weekend them for the Skylark or an Emancipation Park. You know, whoever has custody. Custody is the key word here. So, man, wow, that's something wrong. I'm not talking too. What? Yes, Mr. Robinson, you are spot on. So, when it comes on to custody, that is the contention area. So, if they aren't able to agree, then it comes down to what we call contention, meaning that there's a dispute with who gets what happens. And when it comes on to that, that's where the Children Guardianship and Custody Act really plays a key part. Because the core of it, the main thing that the courts will look at is the welfare of young Jimmy. Let's say Jimmy is 5 years old, or no, scrap that. Let's say Jimmy is like 3, because at the age of 3 is when most of you guys would have gained consciousness, right? Because at the age of 3, I think that's when I first stopped and I said, huh, the sky is blue. Because I never really noticed that before. So at the age of 3, you tend to be a bit functioning on your own, but not functioning to the point where you can make active decisions for yourself. So with that said, What happens to Jimmy? Can anybody tell me what happens to Jimmy? What would the court look at when it comes on to what happens to Jimmy if Jane and John just can't agree and Jimmy just needs to know what's going to happen? I'll tell you. The courts will look at the welfare of Ji- who Jimmy is more dependent on. Okay, cool. Jimmy's safety. I'm seeing the comments. Cool. Very good answers. Very good answers. What happens is the welfare, and you guys are right. You guys are absolutely right. Welfare is broken up into different categories. So, where is Jimmy going to go to school? Would Jimmy have a better lifestyle if he stays with John or with Jane? Is it a case where if he's with Jane, he has more opportunities to go into church or, you know, you just putting odds together. It's like a balancing scale. That's what law is all about. And that's why we love it because it's all about balance. So the court weighs the balancing scale. And at the end of it, they decide what is best for Jimmy with an objective approach. Because when it comes down to court proceedings, it always has to be from an impartial view. Impartial meaning there is no bias within the system, there is no leaning on one side or the other. It is really strictly on the facts. Cool. But no, what about the yard? Because there is sometimes, well, oftentimes, where the family had started, and let's say John and Jane did decide to buy a house. Well, that house in this context would be the family home. And the term family home is very important because that's what the law looks at. The family home is very dependent on the circumstances surrounding. So the family home being where John, Jane, that is the main place where they decide to reside. Rest them head and you know, right. So the family home is the main contention of the divorce if it gets to that part generally, and I know I tend to yap quite a bit, especially when I get excited about telling my good colleagues about the law. But the family home is ordinarily done in a 50-50 split. Why this is important is because it doesn't matter what would have happened in terms of contributions. Once it is established that there's a family home, and the family home, there are multiple factors, but it all comes down to it depends. So once it is decided that the family home must be shared up, then it is going to be a 50-50 split. So, ladies, gentlemen, if you decide to purchase a house with your significant other, please be minded that even though you put $1.5 million US into this house, and then the other person puts two bills, Jamaican, it doesn't matter. It's going down the middle. Because only in very rare circumstances and very particular circumstances that the court will go away from this. What if I only put it in my name? You see, that is the trick that some persons try to go around. However, the concept of marriage means that you and the other person are completely sharing everything. So even if it's in your name, then it is still shared. So that is just why it is prudent that you are very careful with the person that you get into a marriage situation with. And I'm pretty sure you guys have heard this all the while. So just giving you a nice little overview of what to know and what to expect. So let's say, and I'll put it into context where you can really understand. So let's say, and this is more of, I don't even want to use that word before you guys start to bash me down. But the traditional concept of how relationships work, where the man was being the breadwinner and then the wife being the caretaker of the family, carrying the house, carrying the child. So let's say the man was the person that put the substantial sum into the house. However, the wife, because she's taking care of the family, taking care of the house, then the wife wouldn't have the opportunity to go ahead and find income for herself to contribute to the house. So the law protects the wife in that sense that even if they are separated, the wife is still secured by many other means in terms of the split of the property. I'm seeing questions or comments in the chat, but because my screen is a bit small on this side because I'm presenting, it's a bit hard to see them. Let me just take a quick look, at what's going on in the chat. All right,
Like,
all right. So make sure you don't live with anyone for okay, all right. So you can only split if it's the family house. All right, excellent question. Shine. I hope I'm not butchering your name. In terms of the split, it is let's go. It depends. So when it comes on to splitting of assets, the main thing that happens in most scenarios is dealt with the family home. Other assets are really dealt with based on your own ownership of it, how much you'd have contributed to it, and all that. So let's say John did have a gym that he bought, then that would not be the family home. So depending on how much the contribution would be on his side, then it would mostly go to him. So the 50-50 split really only applies to the family home. All right. I'm just realizing the time, and I told you guys the time I have, so let's keep it going. Let's look at employment rights. So, an employee is defined as an individual who has entered into or works under a contract with an employer, whether that contract is expressed or implied, oral or in writing, and regardless of whether the work is manual, clerical, or otherwise. So, I know that this would be something that would definitely relate to everyone here, being that we're going into the working world. Let me tell you, the main things that pop up out of this is persons being wrongfully or unfairly dismissed. What that means, them fire foolishness. Cool. But the main thing I'll look at here is in relation to unfair dismissal, where they would have removed you from your post after you have entered into this contract for XYZ amount of time, but they removed you because they gave no proper reason and they did it outside of the required notice period. And most employment contracts with their notice period is going to be 2 weeks. So if you're ever signing up to be, let's say, you are work as a banker and you see the employment contract, make sure you look at that fine print and you're going to most times see the 2 week period of notice that you have to give to them before you quit, or a 2 week notice period that they have to give to you before they fire. So this is important because oftentimes, especially in a capitalist society, we are taken for lamb chop. If anybody has ever been to what do you call it, Che Maria or Ches Maria, that Lebanese place, yes, a lamb on a platter. And why it's important that you know these rights is that you know where to go to seek redress, and that's where I'm taking you right now. So when it comes on to these employment matters, it depends. However, the main point of remedy is through the Industrial Disputes Tribunal, which is most persons know it as the Ministry of Labor. So initially, what will happen is that you make the complaint to your employer that you know, say, but just there, I don't think I just up and just tell them to me yard. That can't work. So you try to work it out with the employer first before going into anything else. And if that doesn't work, then you go to the Ministry of Labor, where they will take you through a process of investigating your case. And it will go through a hearing to determine what happens next. If they decide that your employer did in fact terminate your employment unfairly, ding, 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 come on down. You might be entitled to one of the following possible remedies. So it could be reinstatement into the position that you were in. But what I find, guys, is that with how the place is, Jamaica is very small, and you guys might know this term quite often, bad mind or, them feel away. So a lot of times persons might not want to be reinstated into the position that they were in because it might have a bad taste after. But depending on how large the organization is, it could always be moved around to a position of the same level and same pay grade, but away from whoever, which bad mind boss did I try to fight you in the first place. Yes, exactly. Take the extra pay. If the tribunal deems that that is the best recourse for you, then chances are the wages that you would have lost and would have been entitled to for the time period, that might be what you would be getting instead of reinstatement, if that's not what you want. All right, let's keep it going. Let's keep it going. Did I miss any questions for that part? Let me just take a quick check. Quick check. Quick check. Da 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 da. And the weeks are more dependent on the years of service. Yes, yes, yes. Precisely, precisely. Sometimes I think it goes by 2, 5, and 10 years. Uh, when you're at the 10-year mark, then it's about 4 weeks. But yes, it does depend on how long you've been at that point in your employment. Okay, now when it comes on to this area of law, contracts, I know that a lot of you are very ambitious, which is why you're here. And this area of law can be your maker or breaker. So, a lot of the statutes or definitions that I would have given you from before are from statute being the acts. However, there is no set definition from any statute that defines what a contract is, because contract rights come from the common law. What is common law? I should have explained this from before, so forgive me. But the common law is essentially the cases that go through the court system. So, based on these cases and the outcome, they will set precedent to tell the judges how these cases should be decided on in the future if anything of it similar comes before them. So, a written or oral agreement between two or more parties that is enforceable, that is the most common and effective definition of what a contract is. And why this is important is because not a lot of persons really decide to appreciate the oral part of it, and that's what bond them most. So, even if you didn't have it in writing, the fact that it was said, agreed upon, and there was no form of force, like we never force for this, they never pull a weapon on you and say, oh, sign this agreement or say I will do this, and there was no form of force, pressure, or any allusion into it. You willingly, they never forced you, or I thought you weren't forced it. You willingly went into this agreement to take part in whatever action them tell you for this, right? So let's say you are a carpenter and you do freelance services, but then Mr. Chin down the road say, oh, you want a sign. So Mr. Chin say, oh, give me a sign now. I will pay you $250,000 if you just let me assign one of the corner shop, up at the park, run of the hill, beside the mango tree, run of the yard. So if you do that now and you do this by, let's say, until you've done this by the end of March, then you get X amount of money, you get that type of money, right? So now you as a carpenter, you say, all right, cool. But oftentimes, and this is what happens in a lot of Jamaican society, where you don't have a lot of persons walking around with a pen or paper or with a lawyer, then they tend to just go along with the oral contract without putting it in writing. But good for them because oral contracts still have effect. So the main thing that you have to take note of though is that, and the basic principles are here, it has to be with persons that are above the age of 18, meaning they can consent to it. They are legally responsible for themselves to go into any agreement that they go, right? And the next thing, they have to be of sound mind. Sound mind, what is sound mind? It means they are right thinking, functioning persons in society that do not have any mental illnesses and they can operate on their own without depending on anybody. That's what it all means. So if this is the case, then you, him, he, her, she, him, yes, you can go in a contract. And it does not need to be in writing and it will be binding. So if by chance Mass Joe or go build the sign for Mr. Chin. If Mr. Chin not give me money, then Mass Joe can come tell me, say, yo, so Mr. Chin tell me, say, yo, he might pay me X amount of money to go build him sign, and then him tell me for move and right so I'm going to sue Mr. Chin for everything he has. Because it can't go back on your word because it's a breach of contract. And what happens if you breach a contract? In red writing, you get sued. So, guys, when it comes down to contracts, it might not be just black and white, pun intended, because there are several things you have to consider. But the main things are that there was an offer being Mr. Chin asked him for build the sign, and Mas Joe accepted the offer. There was consideration being money or any benefit, and then there was performance of it. That will constitute a contract that is binding even if it's not in writing. And point three, I just made it clear just so there's an absence of doubt. Contracts can be entered into by companies because in law, a company will be, well, they classify as a person in law. So a company can be a person that you enter a contract with, and the same thing applies. If you breach the contract, then please prepare it. And where these matters dealt with, where they enforced, they are enforced within the civil parish court, the Supreme Court, and oftentimes in mediation. And you'll hear my learned friend, Miss Roberts, talk to you more about mediation when we get there. So, generally, when it comes now to constitutional rights, it really is the motherlode. Well, I use that word loosely when it comes down to these rights and functions. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and it is a right that is giving you that entitlement. Oftentimes I hear that our generation is very entitled, which is why you have so much more court cases coming out, which is right because we know our rights, and that is what you should be standing on. You stand on business. You don't let them play with you because once they take you for a fool once, trust and believe they will do it time and time again. So this is the motherlode of it. So constitutional rights are the heavy ones that no matter what, if you breach this, there will be some form of penalty. Where there is a breach, there will be redress or a remedy. Same thing. So a right to life being the main one. Everybody has a right to be alive, to be free, to be out there and breathing because that is our God-given right, and the Constitution just protects that.
But
Freedom of movement, freedom of speech, these are all things that you have heard
we
from
need
day
to
to
see.
day, but some of them that you may not have heard was a right to a fair trial and due process. What does that mean? It means, let's say, for example, if you by chance were arrested and you go before a court, you have to be given every single thing done by the book. What do I mean by that? You must be given at least the opportunity to seek legal representation so them can just jump you up and put you in front of a court one time and say, oh, guilty or not guilty, and blah, 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 you're sentenced, you got a prison. No, you have the right to seek legal representation, and that is a part of a fair trial and due process. Because you who are, let's say, yeah, one carpenter again, master, he doesn't know the rules of law or anything that governs a courtroom, so he can't properly defend himself. So the Constitution provides that you are able to seek aid to have somebody else defend you, being a lawyer, right? So if it is a case where you're ever in that situation, please remember your right that you have the right to a fair trial. There is so much more detail into it, but I just want to give you the basics so you know what to do and what not to do. When it comes on to right to education and healthcare, those also speak for itself. These are things that we see day in and day out. Sometimes you might be seeing that it might not be the case where they're being afforded to you by your government, but regardless of the fact, you have the right to sue them. So let's say, for example, again, you are barred from education because of, let's say, your religion for discrimination, and this is for argument's sake, then you are able to then take a claim against the state, take a claim against the school as well, and seek redress as to your rights so that you may be freed of that discriminatory action, and then you can be now within the education system. It might not be at the same place, but from that you could receive damages. Damages are monetary awards. And generally, when it comes down to enforcing these rights, you will see that INDICOM is one of them. This is where you put complaints against the police. You seek out help from the Office of the Public Defender because these institutions are here so that they can help you. Don't watch the pocket. If it's a case where you're not enough money, there are places that will help you. Legal aid is one of the most underrated things or facilities that are there out in the public. Legal aid, they provide a lawyer for you at a very cheap rate. So even if you have no money, they will find something to help you. Cool? Cool. Don't take it for a joke. And with that, I will pause and come to the end of my presentation because I know that I have been speaking quite a lot as if I am in a case that is extending from Monday to Friday. And I know that you guys didn't come for that. So I'll put it right there and I will leave the chat open for any questions. And chances are there are some others probably missed them in the chat because I couldn't see. So let me see, or if Madam Moderator, could you assist me with directing the questions?
Okay, so there are a few questions about the oral contract, right? So Teresa is asking, how can it be substantiated? Oh my God. How can it be that word, I'm sorry. How can an oral contract be validated? Wouldn't it be your word against mine?
Yes. Well, excellent question. Teresa, you're on the mark. When it comes to that, there are several factors that you can put into context when you're building your case. Let's say, for example, we'll go back to the same Mr. Chin and Mas Joe situation. There could be a case where when this oral contract was being entered into, there were eyewitnesses that could attest to what was happening. The rules of law are very specific though, because let's say Mas Joe just even just a run of the mill youth and you just don't really know what about them. There is such a thing called privity of contract. And privity of contract says that if you were not the person that entered into the contract with the other person, you cannot sue them. However, there are ways around it. And yes, Cadia, good example, having witnesses. So if there are oral contracts, there might have been persons in the area to have shown that, yo, some of the when that they go on, and then they assist in court by giving testimonies. And then there's such a thing called part performance. What is part performance? Part performance is where the contract was created, and then Mas Joe pick up himself and he's doing what he's supposed to do in that contract. So he starts building the sign. But let's say halfway, Mr. Chin say, yo, move from here, so, yeah, do this for my property. Come out. This never happened. So, part performance is saying because of what was already done, this shows that a contract is already in existence. So you can't go back on your word, basically. So having something to show for it, this is where evidence really comes into play. You're bringing everything that can show that this existed. I hope that answered it.
I believe it does. Tracy says, no question, but wanted to say excellent presentation, very informative, and you explained well.
Yes. Yes, Katie, text, emails, voice messages, they do also count as evidence that can be put into court to substantiate the claim. So yes. Spot on, Katie. I love the attentiveness. All right. If there are no more questions at this time, then I would be more than glad to hand over to my learned friend, Miss Ruth Ann Roberts.
Thank you, Shamar. Okay, so yes, indeed, Shamar gave a very wonderful presentation. I hope you guys learned a lot, especially you entrepreneurs. And so coming in, very important to understand what is in a contract, what your rights are, etc., etc. However, I am going to bring you on the social media side of things for a moment. Let me see if I can share.
Hi, Miss Roberts. In the meantime, while you are sharing, I'm seeing that someone has their hand up. Do you mind if they go ahead and ask their question?
Sure, sure, sure.
All right, great. So, Dean, did you have a question?
No, I do not. Sorry, that was an accident.
All right, great. No problem. Over to you, Miss Roberts.
All right, turned off the wrong icon. Okay. All right, so I know that you can all see my screen. We'll be talking about defamation. All right. So, who can tell me what they think defamation is? Anyone?
All right. Defamation is speaking something about someone that is not really true, or there's no evidences to provide any information about the person.
Evidence spreading information about the person that that thing is true, right?
Yes.
Okay, you're right along the ball of it. Essentially, that's what it is, right? Yes, so I'll be doing defamation, access to justice through alternate dispute resolution and legal aid. But let's get right into it. But before, I just want to ensure that this disclaimer is out there, right? The information you'll hear tonight has been taken from case law, legislation, and other sources of law. None of what is said to be intended to be taken as official legal advice. So please, 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 please seek independent assistance or consultation from an attorney for any legal issues that you might have. And I'm sure you'd have heard plenty John from Shamar earlier tonight, right? Opinions and comments may be expressed throughout and should not be taken as official legal advice or the views of anyone else except for the opinion or comment maker. No, right into what we're talking about, the defamation, right? So what is a defamatory statement? And please don't feel intimidated by the amount of slides that you might see that I have. I tend to also talk a lot, and so I restricted myself to ensure that I stick to what is in the PowerPoint so I don't go over the time, and it will be quick. All right? So, a defamatory statement is one which is communicated to a person other than the person that the statement is made about. So, it has to be somebody else, not about you, it's about somebody else, right? And that statement, it puts that person in a negative light, right? So it's a statement that tends to expose the same person to hatred, contempt, ridicule, or it tends to lower him in the esteem of right thinking members of society, right? So it can't just be mere abuse of words. It have to be something that really tarnish that person's reputation. So posting that that person head big, no, it won't amount to a defamatory statement. But if you post that, they went to such and such a clinic and had an abortion, all that kind of stuff, and it's especially not true, then that person can say that you made a defamatory statement, and yes, you can be brought to court, right? But just to go over, essentially, defamation is committed where someone publishes or communicates to another person a statement that is untrue and damages a person's reputation. And yes, Electronic communication is included as a means of disseminating defamatory material, right? So just to go a bit more into what defamatory statements, can do, it can lower a person in the estimation of the right-thinking members of society. It can expose a person to hatred, like I said, and ridicule. It can cause another person to shun or avoid him or her, right? So if we end up, let's use my name. Someone posts about me and says, oh, Ruth Ann has been sleeping around with many, many men, and then my church decides to shun me from the congregation, right? I can come out and use my I can bring that person to court. I can sue them for making a defamatory statement about me, right? And that defamatory statement has to also discredit a person in his trade, profession, or calling. So if you go around and say that an attorney is a liar, right, and that they lied about certain things, yes, that attorney can come back and sue you for defamation, right? And damage a person's financial credit as well is something that a defamatory statement can do. Now, the elements of defamation, right? 1, the statement must be defamatory, which are the things that we spoke about earlier, causing hatred, shunning, etc., right? 2, it must refer to the person bringing the claim. So it must refer to somebody else, not you, somebody else, right? 3, it must be published, which means it's communicated to at least one person other than the person whom the statement is about. Okay? So, republication now. Because I realized that on Instagram, on Twitter, the different social media platforms, because we think that we are not the original makers of the statement, we think we can get away with reposting or reposting to our story and all those other things that we think we do without actually making the post itself. But under the act, the publisher means a person who has published a matter that is or may be or is alleged to be defamatory of another person. Publishing of any defamatory information involves the distribution of a defamatory statement to a third party. And at common law, it's generally held that every repetition of a defamatory statement is a fresh publication and creates a fresh cause of action, right? So where a party republishes defamatory information, whether this is done by retweeting, reposting, or resharing, and already knows that the information is defamatory, he may be liable for that tort of defamation, right? So you see that you're not so free from just speaking and just reposting as you feel like, and not just reposting because it's funny. If somebody come and say, okay, Shamar, Ruth Ann, John, Mary, they all reposted what Elizabeth posted about Pastor Mike, right? That Pastor Mike raped a girl in the congregation, definitively raped a girl in the congregation, and Pastor Mike find out that we reposted it, then we can be brought to court for defamation, even though it wasn't us who originally wrote Pastor Mike did such and such. All right, as an example, of course, not talking about any Pastor Mikes here. All right, so republication of defamatory hearsay constitutes adoption of the defamatory statement using adoption in the primary sense, and as a general rule, the republisher is liable in defamation as if the author of the defamatory hearsay. So essentially what I just said, even though you're republishing the information, because you republished it, it will be considered as a fresh post, right? As if you were the one who originally said it. Yes. All right. So defenses to defamation now. Now, this is not, generally speaking, defamation is a broad topic, right? And so we can't get into everything about defamation. but I'll do my best to expose you to the basics and what's really important, at least right up front to you, right? So, what is a defense? Generally speaking, an argument that a person being accused of making a defamatory statement can make, explaining why they did the action, which may lessen their liability or even allow no liability. So, yes, some persons can have reasons for making whatever post or whatever statement that they made or communication that they made that does have a defamatory statement. And if they can explain, and that explanation aligns with whatever defenses are available, and the court considers it, that person, yes, can lessen their liability, meaning that, depending on the judge, for example, they might lower their fine, they might lower whatever damages that might be awarded in favor of the person bringing the claim, right? Or there may be no liability at all, which means that the person might not, be wrong for making the defamatory statement, in putting it in layman terms, really, right? So the defense is available to the accused, and it's not an exhaustive list, is one, truth, and this is explanatory. Everybody should know this by now. A defamatory statement is not true. So if somebody says something that is, in fact, true, and I'm not encouraging anybody here to go around and say certain things. My granny always say, if you don't have nothing good for say, don't say it, right? So not because it's true means you should be going out there and telling people's business, because best believe you might not be caught under defamation, but you might be caught under something else. You might be caught under a different law. You might be caught in breach of data privacy. You might be caught under different things. So even though truth is a defense, it does not necessarily mean that you should go there and spill information about persons that can also harm their reputations. However, if it is, for example, fair comment, right? Statement must be made fairly and honestly, and be a comment or opinion based on the true facts and a matter of public interest. So truth and fair comment are typically some of the defenses that you might see be used for defamation. Because, for example, if let's say I write Ruth Ann blog post, or Ruth Ann the Patriot, right? If I have a blog post like that and I want to expose, for example, Minister of Parliament Piano, for an example, and I want to expose him for some of the stuff that he hasn't been doing or has been doing for the sake of public interest, I might have a defense, especially if it's true, right? Or I can give an opinion about something that has happened that is true, which is where fair comment comes in, right? And I believe that it's important for the public to know about this, right? And then you also have innocent dissemination. And that is where someone above you in power told you to do it, told you to post or communicate this defamatory statement, or they didn't know that the statement, and they didn't know that the statement was defamatory, right? And took reasonable steps to see that the statement wasn't defamatory. So listen, not because somebody tell you if you go post something now, means that you just gonna post it blindly. You must always do your own checks. It's important that you're diligent, that you don't just do for do sake, right? You must always be aware of what you're doing. So for all of the social media managers out there, for all of you content gurus, content creators, be very careful with what organizations and persons might tell you to post, because you may, right, be posting something that you can be taken to court for defamatory statement, for defamation. You can be sued for defamation, right? So even though innocent dissemination is a defense, you still want to ensure that you're being diligent and that you're actually going through what you are posting and ensuring that, this isn't defamatory, right? Now, there are remedies let's say that you are someone who has been, faced with a defamatory statement, meaning somebody else has communicated or published something defamatory about you, right? Now you can seek a remedy, right? So what happened is, under the Defamation Act, a person that has been defamed may seek and obtain damages. And now damages means an amount of money that the court calculates after assessing the circumstances. You understand? And they can use different factors in assessing the circumstances. For example, a sixth former who's been called a liar versus an established attorney at law who's been called a liar. Ways completely two different, weights. That defamatory statement might hurt that attorney more than that sixth former based on the job category, right? Not saying that either can't receive damages, but the amount that the court might award might differ because of the impact that that defamatory statement would have made on that person, right? So another remedy is correction, which is where the court orders that the defendant, or the person who made the defamatory statement publish a correction of defamatory statement, and sometimes this comes with an apology. So if Tom said that John, for example, did not properly put away money, Tom is known to work at an established bank, and Paul says that Tom did not put away the money properly, and he puts it out there. Tom can get into serious trouble, right? And Tom can sue Paul for that defamatory statement. What can happen is the court might say, Paul, you have to put out a correction statement. So what might happen now is Paul will put out saying, all right, in fact, Tom did not do this. Or yes, Tom did receive money, but he did put it away in accordance with the procedures of this established bank, right? And I do apologize for making this statement that has tarnished his reputation. Don't know how many of you have seen on Instagram, after something is said about certain content creators or celebrities, right after that, sometime 2 days after, how quickly you'll see the other person who made the post delete it, one, and then come back and say, oh, I didn't mean this and I didn't mean that. And they kind of start to correct some stuff, and sometimes they also apologize. That's a remedy that can be done and given by the court, right? And there are many more possible remedies based on each specific case, right? Now, the general examples of possible defamation on social media. TikTok. Right? Everybody love this TikTok thing and they repost TikTok. It's so easy on social media to just repost anything that you see, especially if it's funny, right? But you never know whose reputation you might be tarnishing without really knowing, And it's a thing where we do have to take responsibility, because we can say we don't know, but as general human beings, you really should be aware of what you are putting out there on social media, because as you know, anything that's put on the internet never really truly calms down. It's something that can be seen by anybody. I'll tell you this, in my interview, before I even got the chance to answer, someone asked about my social media, and before time you know it, one of the employers or potential persons who was there that worked with that organization pull up my Instagram really quickly, So you have to be very careful what you're posting on your social media, right? Not just for anybody else, but also for your sake. Because if you're posting continuously degrading things and continuously, things that aren't true, things that might be derogatory in some sense, you have to be very careful about that. Even if your Instagram or your social media is private, I'll urge you still to be very careful and aware of what you post coming from you and about other persons, right? So TikTok, video spreading untrue statements about a person, whether the person is a celebrity or not, right? YouTube vlog or podcast discussing untrue statements about a prominent figure that's likely to cause damage to the person's reputation, tweeting a statement which is likely to cause damage to a person's reputation, even where the person's name is not specifically mentioned, as long as a reasonable person would understand that the tweet is referring to the person, right? For example, and just for the sake of an example, if we go out there and we say, bro God, automatically, half of you know who I'm talking about, even though I haven't called his name specifically, right? So even if you're not calling that person's name directly, once the reasonable person can understand who I'm talking about, you have to be very careful, right? It can amount to defamation. And retweeting a link to an article on X where the article contains untrue statements about an individual that's likely to damage the person's reputation can also amount to defamation, right? Let me check if I have any comments or questions, because I know I've been talking a lot. And I can't really see on from my end, so somebody can just alert me if there are any questions so far or anything.
Okay, so Chine asked, so what if the information about Pastor Mike is right? What will happen?
Okay, I suppose I would have answered that already. Right, so like I said, a defense to defamation is truth. And so you might find the public will be interested in knowing that a prominent pastor who they should be confident in and hold to a certain, esteem is performing as a Christian he should. So if he's going around there talking to boys or talking to females, right? Once again, my example of Pastor Mike is no specific individual. I want to make that very clear. Okay, but if he is going around and doing that, and it is true, it is in fact true, and boy, if them come for you, you better have your evidence. That's what I have to say. If they come for you about defamation, you better have your evidence. You better have persons who are willing to speak up and be honest about it too. Because it is true, some of the evidence might not be out there up front, so someone might come to you to sue you for defamation. But as I said, if it is true, and there's evidence to show that it is true, right? It is a defense to defamation. Also, not, as I said before, not because something is true means it should be said. You might not be held against the court of law or held up by the court of law for that statement, right? It might not be defamation, but just a general moral attitude. As my grandma would say, if you done good for say, don't say it. But in the case of the example, Pastor Mike, and it is true, and he is going around and he is doing things that can really cause harm to society, and it is a public interest, then the court is, what else I usually see in cases, the court is minded to allow a defense of truth. All right? I hope that answers the question. Any more other questions that were asked?
I'm not seeing any more questions at the moment. I think that is it.
Okay, I'm almost finished with defamation. So, general examples of possible defamations on social media. Again, leaving a comment on Instagram post that contains untrue statement that would expose the person to hatred, contempt, or ridicule by others. So even just commenting on somebody's post, something that is untrue, might cause you to be sued for defamation, right? Posting or sharing a meme or edited photo on Instagram, which is damaging to someone's reputation. All right, here's the next thing, AI. We have to be so careful in this AI stage and this phase of AI where you can replace people's heads and put it on different bodies and replace people's body parts and put it on, people, especially prominent people. And don't get me wrong, defamation is not only for prominent persons, right? But you're usually gonna see it when it's about prominent persons. But even let's say it's you, right? And a person from school or your workplace might have photoshopped certain body parts on you. So for females, them expose their breasts, them expose certain private parts, and your face is on it. And if you can identify who photoshopped that, best believe, sue them for defamation by all means, because you have every right to. Okay, that, I mean, naturally it's up to you, of course, but you would be able to sue that person for defamation, especially if they would put that, you are, what's the word I'm looking for? Promiscuous, right? Especially if they would say that you're promiscuous, and there's different things, right? And but just by posting different things and changing the imagery of someone, right? And it conveys a message, you can be sued for defamation. So you have to be very careful about that. The memes, the photoshopping, the AI, you have to be so careful about that. Just general word to the wise, be considerate. Be considerate of each other. What you would not want to be done for yourself, don't do it to other persons, because there very well may just be legal consequences that you never thought about. You never thought it would be that serious. You never thought you'd be taken to court for it, and you would have just damaged someone's reputation. When my classmates and I, actually, well, at the time, my colleagues know, would have also done a presentation on defamation, and we would have done it a plot or story of a Christian girl who had organization, so she was a Christian influencer, and somebody would have put out on social media that she is promiscuous, and that she went on, so they snapped a picture of her and they put on the post a picture of her and another boy around at the back of the school, and they put in a post that, yeah man, this girl is promiscuous, she doesn't believe in her Christian principles, etc., etc., right? And it turns out that the boy who did it, he was just really jealous, right? This was a little example play that we were doing. It turns out he was just really jealous, right? And when it really came down to it, and she did decide to take legal actions, because what started happening was she started losing her deals that would have allowed her to get some money and provide for her family, right? Certain organizations started dropping her as an influencer, and her page just wasn't the same anymore, because people now kept on bullying her. People kept on saying things about her. This was something that was being spread about her name. No. And it was being associated with her easily. One Google, you could easily find this information about her. And so she decided that this was more than just one step of bullying, and decided to take it to court and sue that classmate for defamation. And it's when she starts sue now, and him get the service papers. Like how you watch on Suits, or you've been served. that is how it got to out here, right? So when we did the whole, oh, you've been served, Tom Joe, he start freak out, So don't let that be you. Be very considerate of what you put online, especially about other persons in this age of social media, right? And even if the photo is posted to a disappearing story or on a live, right? So long as it is proven that it has been published to a third party, that person can be sued for defamation, right? And I already gave plenty of examples, but just for your sake, you can read on Riley and Oberman against Heybroek, right? That's just a case, but you can read on that on your own, because I would have already given plenty of examples where that is concerned, right? So as I said, impact of social media on defamation on victims, damage reputation, right? Relationships with peers and coworkers may be strained, resulting in exclusion and isolation. So where your boss might have wanted to put you on TVJ, on Smile Jamaica in the morning, maybe they would have wanted you to go and represent their company. But this thing has gone out about you that is not true. You're now put in, the back. So some of them might not outrightly fire you, but they might not use you up again because of the information that's out there about you. So please be mindful of what you say about your peers when you post on social media, when you comment, even when you repost, whatever it is, any information that comes from you, just be careful to ensure that it's not defamatory or derogatory or just mean. You know, sometimes you just don't have to post mean things, right? And financial loss, like I gave the example where the person was a Christian influencer who had deals. I'm so sorry if you're hearing the dogs barking in my neighborhood, right? Where you have deals, content influencers, social media influencers should be very as much aware of what they post about other people, just as how they wouldn't want certain things to be posted about them, because them have all of these deals from all these different companies, right? They don't want to lose any of them. And to be very frank and honest with you, social media content creation is a good and lucrative way of making money, right? Especially for us in a younger generation where we're becoming more financial literate and we're not going through the traditional ways of making money to you know, take care of our family. We have to secure our bread and butter, right? So just as how you want to secure your bread and butter, secure somebody else's own by maintaining that awareness of what you post, right? Emotional distress, boy, when you look at the suicidal rate in Jamaica and the amount that comes from bullying, and not just bullying but social media targeting, cyberbullying, right? It's sad. And if you have any conscience and any form of, you know, moral well thinking, right? You don't even have to be a Christian, just generally speaking, just as a mere human being, just be considerate of what you put on social media, as funny as it might be, right? Because sometimes the intention is not to put any harm out there, you know, but just be aware of what you're posting because it might cause emotional distress, right? And you don't know, that person later on might have taken everything come together so personally, not knowing how to handle it, not knowing what measures, not knowing which places to go and seek help or where to get support, and might just take the unwanted route of taking their own life, right? And not just that, it might cause depression, it might cause anxiety, right? Different things like that. Imagine continuously reposting something about someone who, you know, might have peed themselves in public, even though that wouldn't necessarily count as defamation still, but just generally speaking of what we post about, you know, you would want to post that continuously of someone. Oh, and it just came to my mind, like I said, even though you might not be caught under defamation, you might be caught under a different area of law, such as reposting pornography, child pornography, right? You might not have videoed it, but by simply reposting it and resharing it, even what was happening the other day, where unfortunately that teenager, what happened to her, how she was sexually, you know, assaulted and what was done to her. And there were persons out there sharing it, multiple videos, and multiple teenagers this happened to. For some reason, our fellow citizens thought it was okay to continuously reshare this on their WhatsApp, on their stories, on their Instagram, on their social media, not knowing the emotional distress and harm that would have continued to cause. And you very well could have been called for you know, disseminating child pornography. So please be very careful about what you put on your social media, how you communicate to others, right? Like I said, so legal consequences, damage reputation, right? That's the end of my defamation. But just to quickly go through, because I know the time is 7:36 and I know that I have a slim timeline here. I just want to ensure that all of you knew what access you had to the justice system, right? I know previously I said you have ADR, that's alternate dispute resolution, and you also have legal aid, right? Now, just to quickly go through that, and then that's the end of my presentation, right? Here you have a picture of what is going on here. World Star Hip Hop Fighting Camp, right? Now, if you don't want this to be you in your community or in your school, right? I would encourage all of you to get some ADR training, right? Where you can have mediation being done, whatever issues, conflicts that are happening in your community, you can become a trained mediator, right? And you can help assist with that. So it doesn't have to get to this point and you end up on World Star Hip Hop, right? So just to let you know, your different resources, alternative dispute resolution. So in Jamaica, we have an established ADR for short center, which is called Dispute Resolution Foundation. You can quickly write the website, that's drfja.org. And they are a civil society, public law organization in Jamaica, created to facilitate and encourage the practice of application of various alternative dispute resolution methods in court and throughout the wider society across the region. And the DRF for short works with courts, Ministry of Justice and other ministries, departments, and agencies in Jamaica and the Caribbean and helps to strengthen the region's agenda for justice, peace, and development through advocacy, training, and other related services. Right? There's also the Jamaica International Arbitration Center Limited, the JAIAC for short, provides support for the conduct of domestic, regional, and international arbitration, mediation, adjudication, mutual evaluation, and other services under its own rules, and it as well administers and provides support for ad hoc arbitrations. So you can write down the website jaiac.org, right? Now, just to quickly go through dispute resolution, why it's needed, and some modes of dispute resolution, because I know some of you might be wondering, what is dispute resolution? And I think it can be a little bit self-explanatory, sorry. It is, well, how you resolve disputes, different ways on how you resolve disputes. And this is an alternative that can be taken instead of going to court. Court take long, all right? Sometimes court take long. I'm not going to lie to you. A matter can go on for 6 years. A matter can go on for 10 years, okay? So if you can't get that done in 3 hours, I would encourage you, fellow peers, instead of taking everything to court, use up alternate dispute resolution. And I just gave you some places that you can contact if needs be for training or if you need a mediator or an arbitrator yourself, right? So dispute resolution is directed towards reaching solutions while past circumstances may be mentioned, right? Dispute resolution is not focused on analysis of the past, but is future oriented. So if Mary and Jane have an argument over, let's see, some money and who must get the money and how the money must share up because them have a little business or something, right? And them can't seem to come to agreement. They can get a mediator, right? Now, generally speaking, they can always go to Tom John down the road and ask as a neutral third party to help them go through this. But if you want to be officially called a mediator, if you want to officially have the title of a mediator, then you need to be certified and you can be trained for that by going to the Dispute Resolution Foundation, right? And Dispute Resolution also produces creative solutions owned by the participants, and participants develop and agree to solutions themselves. This is mediation now, right? So in mediation, you don't have somebody telling you what to do. You just have a neutral third party who allows you to speak. You know, it's almost like an umpire who allows each party their rightful time to speak in a amicable manner, agreeable manner, right? So that they can come to a solution on their own, as averse to going to court and trying to win this court thing, which can cause issues in the friendship and in the family later on, right? It's also a time saver. Like I just said, many problems can be resolved in 3 hours. You don't need to necessarily go to court for everything because it might take you all up to 3 years, 6 years, 10 years, and more. Okay? It really depends on how that court proceeding goes, right? So even disputes which take several sessions before resolution are more productive, the less exhausting than other methods of problem solving, right? And it allows, like I said, for continued relationships because participants feel successful and dignity is preserved. People can continue to live and work together after dispute, right? can help parties avoid extremes of firing, resignation, ongoing quarrels, separation, or litigation. So if you work as a business or even in your own entrepreneurial activities, right, you can hire a mediator who can come and amicably solve whatever issues are going on with the persons who work with you or with you and someone else, or just other persons that you might know don't have anything to, might not have anything to do with you. You know, you might just see the space where, you know, I think that this can be resolved amicably. Let's get a mediator if they agree to it, right? And right. So I had something here from the Honorable Madam Justice Maureen Rajanoff Lee, who is a judge of the Caribbean Court of Justice. And she gave some information in her distinguished lecture of October 2015. That's something that you can Google as well. I'm not going to go through all of this here, but essentially she's saying the same thing, where ADR enables parties to have creative solutions. You know, it's a little bit more rigid in court. You know, most times you have to just do what the judge says or what is ordered by court, you know, whereas you don't have to really go to that level, right? Sometimes you can decide amongst yourself what's the best way of handling something, and if you're not able to agree with each other, put the neutral man in the middle who can help you, you know, who can be the umpire for that situation to ensure that the two parties come to an amicable agreement, you know. And with ADR as well, like I said, yes, you can choose a neutral third party, right? Allows you the freedom of choice, you know, whereas education, like I just said, doesn't allow some education being the same thing as going to court, you know, doesn't allow for so much freedom of choice, you know, with respect to the decision maker, right? You get a judge, that's your judge, you know, not that there's any bias from a judge, but it tends to be a bit more ordered. You want to be able to relax. Mediation can even happen in your living room, right? So when you go court, things tend to be a bit tense. Usually, like you observe it among certain parties. You know, you wonder why your brother carry you go court for. You know, because your brother carry you go court now, you're not about to talk to him again, right? So let's use up the different avenues that we can get for justice. If it have to go to court, fine. But I would encourage us to seek other measures such as mediation and even possibly arbitration, which I'll get into, to deal with justice. You can access justice not just by going to court, but like I said, by going through ADR, right? Saves time, saves money in court for 6+ years. Best believe you're paying lawyer fees, you're paying court fees, you're paying every fee that you can think of that's associated with your case, even for just printing and getting something stamped, okay, and getting something delivered, right? A lot of people say that attorneys are not cheap. Well, it's not because they want to overcharge, I can say that much. It is because there's a lot of work that is required, and there's a lot of fees that are required to ensure that you get the best case put on your behalf as possible. Whereas ADR, you don't use as much resources. You don't need so much time. You can just go down to living room and just have it out, talk, allow the person to walk away if they need to for some time and then come back. It's that creative and flexible. You understand? So ADR will save time. It also saves money, right? And like I said, we focus on mediation and arbitration. So just to highlight and emphasize that you get the point while I'm finishing up. Mediation is the use of a facilitator, trained, unbiased, confidential, to help parties. Oh yes, must be important to note. It is confidential. Once you have a trained mediator, certified mediator, arbitrator, just as it would be confidential within court space, you know, or within your attorney, it's also confidential in mediation. It's not out there for everybody to know, right? Certain procedures are still put in place to ensure that you get the respect and dignity of having, you know, justice, essentially, right? So you use a neutral third party that will help with conflict, right? Listen with a view to designing solution which meets their needs, right? Mediation can be conducted in the court system, yes, because they still use mediation for civil matters, right? Before you sue somebody, the court usually orders that mediation be done first before we get to the point of going to court, right? That's in our civil procedure rules, right? Workplace, police station, schools, any other setting where disputants choose a third party to help them settle their differences, right? And mediation is a consensual process in which an impartial third party with no power to impose a resolution. So with mediation, whoever you have as the third party cannot tell you what to do. They really only just umpire the agreement and the arrangement that comes about to ensure that, something is happening, progress is being made, right? But sometimes mediation doesn't work. Sometimes you have to take it up a step higher, and that can bring us to arbitration. Arbitration involves a neutral arbitrator who hears evidence from both sides, then makes a binding decision to resolve the dispute. So I would say that not everybody can be an arbitrator. Usually, and just generally speaking, arbitrators are those that are within certain professions. So you might find that an attorney is an arbitrator. Somebody who might be a CEO for a company might be an arbitrator. Somebody who might be on the board of a school or education system might be an arbitrator. So the arbitration process is a bit different from mediation, but just as another area or avenue for justice, you can get an arbitrator. In terms of becoming an arbitrator, though, that's different. Anybody can be trained to be a mediator, but it's not exactly the same for arbitration. And like I said, I gave you websites that you can go on to get more information, and you can also call them to find out whether or not you're qualified to become an arbitrator if you seek to. But I know that anybody can be trained as a mediator and certified if they wish to, right? But arbitration now, which is a step higher from mediation or just different, right, allows for that same neutral party, but the arbitrator somewhat mimics a judge in court, where now the arbitrator can hear evidence from both sides and now can make a binding decision to resolve the dispute. So the arbitrator is the one who comes up now with the solution based on hearing both sides, and it is binding. And yes, it still takes less time than going to court. An arbitrator can also be court appointed as well, right? So whatever decision the arbitrator comes up with is final and it's enforceable in court, right? And like I said, you can become trained, certified if you want to write down this website really quickly, as I spoke about, Dispute Resolution Foundation, where you can look up how to get trained as a mediator. And as far as I saw on their website, I know that they offer some amount of education in arbitration as well, right? So, and likewise, I said, if you yourself or you know anybody who requires a mediator or arbitrator, you can visit the same website mentioned today and select from a list of certified mediators and arbitrators if you wish, right? Right. And just to quickly, on my last few slides, access to legal aid, not to make it long again, but Legal Aid Council provides legal aid in criminal matters to persons of small or moderate means. So if you can't afford a top-notch attorney, them, right? And I don't know why it is that people think that, well, I have to be careful how I say this. Attorney is an attorney, right? Sorry. And every attorney that graduates from law school and has their LEC and they're called to the bar is qualified to represent you. So don't feel like because you don't get certain top-notch name attorneys means it won't work out for you in court. That's not true, right? You have some persons who are 5 years at the bar, 6 years at the bar, that will beat some people who are 10 years at the bar in a trial, right? So don't discredit getting legal aid as the wishy-washy, which tends to be what it's thought of by a lot of persons who have encountered Legal aid is there for you if you need access to justice. And you'd be surprised. The same top-notch attorneys who you think you need to go out and sell your house and land and car, to maintain as an attorney, are some of the same top-notch attorneys who are volunteering their time with legal aid. So just so that persons don't get the concept twisted and they're get surrounded by the myths of legal aid and how your case will turn out if you get legal aid. Just know that some of these same attorneys, who have their own private practices, also volunteer their time for legal aid. It is really just ensuring that persons get their access to justice, right? So you have Kingstown Legal Aid Clinic, Montego Bay Legal Aid Clinic, right, which provides legal aid for civil matters as well to persons of smaller moderate means, and these are the websites that you can go on, right? Now, you can also contact the Norma Manley Law School Legal Aid Clinic for more information. I am on my second to last slide. I know I talk a lot. But right, criminal matters entitled to legal aid. You have a list here: murder, attempted murder, wounded, arson, buggery, assault, creating public mischief, larceny, receiving stolen goods, embezzlement, fraud, capital murder, all of that, right? You can go on the Legal Aid Council website and see what is that persons have access to. So if you have an uncle, if you have a friend who can't afford an attorney and they're behind a jail cell, or that they might be accused of something and they don't have the means to get a private attorney, you can let them know that legal aid is available to them, right? To end things all, reading maketh a full man, right? I say that to say all the information that we've given you tonight is really just, it was an earful, but that's not even the half of it. You see the importance of having an attorney? Yes. So that is why I ensure that, you guys know all different avenues to which you can get access. This here that Aspera is doing for you, trust me, take it and eat it up. You understand? And do your extra reading as well, because justice is there, right? I know lots of persons don't believe in the justice system, what it's doing. I can't speak for everybody, but the justice system is there. And persons like Shamar, Mr. Brian, and I want to ensure that that there are attorneys out there who will hear you, that will listen to you. You don't have to be rich to have an attorney, right? There are people who will ensure that you get a fair trial, right? And that you have all means applicable to ensuring that something is done for you in the justice system. And this is not even a half of it, right? So do extra reading, read the Constitution if you can, as Mr. Brian spoke about. A lot of persons tend to take other persons for granted when they think they don't know their rights or they think they don't know their law. Not saying you're supposed to be braggadocious about it and start quote Constitution, section this and section that, when, somebody might pull you over, right? It's about wisdom and ensuring how you apply that wisdom, right? So don't get all uppity about it in your head and start quote off some stuff because you're knowledgeable about it. But just ensure that you know your rights and you apply it in the best ways as possible. Cooperate once you can, and then you can deal with it within the legal way as much as possible. And I think I need to shush now. We're continue anymore. But thank you so much for having me. And I mean, my email, I think I can share my email with the directors if necessary. Not even just for legal, but just to talk, generally speaking, But yes, thank you so much for having me, guys.
You are welcome, Ruthan. So I have been asked to do the vote of thanks. Sorry, I can't turn my camera on. I'm coming from work, so I'm not as cute as I am in the morning right now. But On behalf of Aspire Jamaica and everyone who joined us for Adult 101, I extend a heartfelt thank you to you, Ms. Ruth Ann Roberts and Mr. Shamar Bryan, for your insightful presentations on defamation and civil rights. Ruth Ann, your breakdown of defamation laws, the relevant acts, and the legal recourse available was both enlightening and empowering. Shamar, your discussion on civil rights gave us a clearer understanding of our protections under the law and where to seek help when necessary. Your expertise and willingness to share such valuable knowledge have undoubtedly equipped us with the tools to navigate these critical legal matters confidently. We truly appreciate your time and commitment to educating and empowering young adults, well, the young adults of Aspire Jamaica, that is. Thank you so much once again. We truly, truly enjoyed your presentations, and we're very grateful here from Aspire Jamaica.
Great. Thank you for that, Tracy. And just to add to what Tracy said, I do want to thank you guys again, Shamar and Ruthan, for taking the time to present to us and speaking with us about legal matters. The information wasn't muchful, but it was relevant. It was relevant and useful to us here as youth in Jamaica, and not just Jamaica, but in the world, especially defamation and knowing our rights as citizens. So I know I said earlier that I have a prize for whosoever, can tell me the topic. I think I need to tread lightly, seeing that this is legal matters. I don't want to get myself in any, you know, wrong side of the law. But so these were the topics, the first three, right? I'm seeing Anifia said employment law. Simone said contracts. Chine said rights of Jamaican citizens. And Tracy said human and constitutional rights. And I think we just about touched on all of those topics. So I know that's why I'm treading lightly, Tracy. That is why I'm treading lightly. So I think the best solution here is to split the prize. Split the prize amongst the top four people. Right? We can do that, right, Shamar? Mr. Brian, your advice is needed.
The prize is able to be split, then I see no reason why not.
Thank you very much. So we will be splitting the prize according to my attorney at law here. All right, so the names I called, you guys can message me and send me your number, and we'll get that part started out. But thank you guys for joining as well and for taking the time to listen in and kicking off Adulting 101. Our next session will be March 13th, so do look out for further information and we look forward to seeing you there again. Have a great night and thank you guys for coming out. Good night.
Good night, everyone.